Hey, church, as our country begins to have a conversation about reopening the economy and returning to a normal pace of life, I want to talk to you a little bit about what returning to on-site worship at Tabor might look like. And, we've all laughed about it. We've all joked about what that day might be like. We've said it's going to be like Easter mixed with the Super Bowl, all for Jesus. You've probably seen that video of Chris Farley excitedly running down the aisle to do the David Letterman show. And we've laughed about those things. But as we get closer to the day we return to the building here, we're starting to see that that's probably not what it's going to look like. And so I want to spend some time kind of just sharing what Tabor might look like for a while when we do return. And I'll start with this. Leah and I like to go to a spin class at the YMCA. And I don't know if you know anything about spin class, but it's always done in the dark. And I think that's because they don't want you to be able to see how awful it is and how much you're really struggling and how out of breath you are. Anyway, that's a different conversation entirely. At the end of class, the lights have to go back on. And there's this friend of ours in class. His name's Paul, and he's kind of the self-appointed turn the lights back on guy. And I appreciate that Paul does that because he's very considerate. When he's 3 or 4 steps away from the light switch, he always turns back and yells, "Lights." So that way the rest of us have a moment to think about how we're going to handle the fact that the lights are going to come back on. Some people look down, some people squint, some people close their eyes. Some people just go on as normal, but it gives us the opportunity to consider how we're going to handle that harsh transition. And church, I want you to know, we're still 3 or 4 steps away from the light switch, but we're yelling lights so that you and your family can consider how you might transition back into on-site worship at Tabor. Here's what it'll look like when you do come back. We are taking Governor Holcomb's and the CDC's guidelines and recommendations very seriously. And so you're going to see things happen a little bit differently, at least for a season when you return. Seating in the sanctuary is going to alternate by rows, so that way we can maintain social distancing. The gym is going to be set up as a secondary sanctuary, and it's going to have social distancing in mind. We're not going to pass offering or communion trays. We will still participate in those elements of our service, but we're not going to pass those trays. We're not going to have classes for adults or children as we return. And if you're over 65, have a pre-existing health condition that would make you high risk, we're going to encourage you to stay home for a while. Okay? If you're uncomfortable, if you're not ready to come back to Tabor right away, that's okay. We are still going to broadcast our full worship service at 11 a.m. and then again at 6 p.m. So if you're over 65, if you have a pre-existing health condition, if you're uncomfortable, that's okay. Just stay home, stay safe, and we will make sure that service gets out to you. Now, some of you might be thinking, how long are we going to operate like that? Because that doesn't feel like the Tabor that I've always known. Is that going to be a new normal? And the answer is no. I don't know how long we're going to operate under those guidelines, but the precautions that I've just mentioned are just that, precautions. And they're not our new normal. It's just what this season requires. So that's what things might look like as we return. I want to leave you with 3 thoughts that are going to be important for all of us over the next few months. Okay? First of all, please extend grace. We have different opinions amongst different people. Okay, some of you are ready to return to worship right now. Some of you would prefer to social distance throughout the summer, and that's okay. Please show grace to us as we make the decisions and weigh all the factors, and maybe more importantly, show grace to each other, because there are people in this congregation and people in this community that disagree with your opinion. That's okay. Love them anyway. Show grace. Here's a second one. Keep in mind that this is a fluid situation. Okay, when all of this was starting back in mid-March, I know that seems like an eternity ago, but when all of this was starting back in mid-March, it seemed like information changed on a minute-by-minute basis. And as we prepare for resuming on-site worship, it feels like information is changing on a minute-by-minute basis. And so as restrictions are loosened throughout the state, we aren't sure what's going to happen, and we are putting plans together, but we may end up back at the drawing board. And that's the primary reason why I'm not sharing a concrete date with you today, because this is a fluid situation. Okay? Here's the last thing I want you to do. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, because he is the author and perfecter of our faith. And for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, even though he despised its shame. And right now, he is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Church, remember why we do what we do. We exist to point people to Jesus so that we can see communities changed by Christ. And we have not lost sight of our vision, even for a second. We have been online and we have been on mission. And we will return to Tabor. We will return to our building when returning furthers the cause of seeing communities changed by Christ. Love you guys.